Hello everyone, this is Rajarshi Palit, PGT Economics of JNB Birbhum. Today we are going to learn about Indian economy from the period 1950 to 1990. Now for the sake of simplicity, I have divided this chapter into three parts. First one being planning, second agriculture, and third industry. So in today's presentation, we will be discussing about the process of planning that was adopted in India and the ideas that went into the decision of taking up planning as a strategy for development in India. So let's move on. The learning objective of today's presentation will be that the learners will be able to define various economic systems. They will be able to describe the reasons behind India adopting a mixed economic system. The learners will be able to explain the achievements of economic planning in India. Then the learners will be able to distinguish between various economic systems, and the learners will be able to justify the objectives of India's economic planning. And finally, the learners will be able to describe the achievements of Indian planning. So, the various types of economic systems that exist in today's world are: number one, a capitalist system, number two is socialist system, and the third one is a mixed economy. So we have three types of economies that exist. Number one is capitalist economy, number two is socialist economy, and number three is a mixed economic system. So let us look into the various economic systems. Now, what is a capitalist economy? Now, capitalist economy is a system where the means of production and distribution are driven by the market forces. That means the prices of goods and services in a capitalist economy are determined by the demand and supply of those particular goods and services. So the producers are inclined towards producing goods whose demand is high and which will fetch them high price in the market. So in a capitalist economy, the forces of demand and supply are the main determinants of the prices of goods and services. Next comes socialist economy. Now in a socialist economy, what happens is that the means of production and distribution in this system are owned by the state. With state, we mean the governments of the land. It may be the state government or it may be the central government. So in a socialist economy, we have the means of production and distribution owned by the state. That means in this case, the prices of goods and services are not determined by the market forces, but they are determined by the government. Or we can say that in a socialist economy, the prices are administered. We have administered prices in a socialist economy. The way we have the prices in India in the public distribution system, the prices are determined by the government and not by the forces of demand and supply. Next is mixed economy. Now it is a type of economic system which has elements of both capitalist as well as the socialist system. Here both the public sector and the private sector, they exist. So for the public sector, prices are determined by the government. The private sector functions on the basis of the forces of demand and supply. Next, let's come to the economic system in India. We as a country, India as a country, while adopting economic system, the policy makers wanted that we should have a system which would promote the welfare of all rather than a few. That means the government or the policy makers of that time, when these systems were initiated in the country, they wanted that we should have a system that will promote the welfare of the majority of the people of the society. So that is why socialism as a system appealed to Jawaharlal Nehru. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the first Prime Minister of India, he thought that socialism will be an economic system that will suit India's requirements. However, he didn't support all the economic activities being carried out by the public sector, and that is why we adopted a mixed economic system where we have both the public as well as the private sector coexisting. So India adopted the best of the socialist system, with private sector also being encouraged to participate in economic activities. Now in the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1948, you can find out the details of the areas where these two sectors were allowed to function. Then in 1950, Planning Commission was set up with the Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru as its first chairman. Next comes what is planning. Now planning can be defined as a process where the means that are available to the country, the resources that are available to the country are used in such a manner that the national interest is fulfilled. So we can say that economic planning means utilization of country's resources in different developmental activities in accordance with the national priorities. Whatever be the national priorities, economic planning is a roadmap to achieving these priorities one by one. So next we look into the specific goals of India's 5-year plan. India's 5-year plans had these 4 specific goals, which you will find in almost all the 12 5-year plans that were carried out in India. The first is growth, second is modernization, third is self-reliance, and fourth is social justice or equity. Now, architect of India's planning and plan objectives. Dr. Prashant Chandra Mahalanobis, born in 1893 in Calcutta, was the architect of India's planning. He was the main person behind the planning procedure that was adopted in India along with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Dr. Prashant Chandra Mahalanobis is also the founder of the Indian Statistical Institute at Kolkata. He also started a journal called Sankhya, which was very popular among statisticians to put forward their work, and that is being accepted as genuine work in the field of statistics. So Sankhya is the magazine that was started by Prashant Chandra Mahalanobis, and this has been acclaimed worldwide. So my dear children, you should remember this name Sankhya because this may be asked as a 1-mark question in your board exam. Let us come to the objectives of the 5-year plan. So the first objective is growth. What is growth? Growth is the increase in the country's capacity to produce goods and services all by itself. That means when we say that a country is growing or an economy is growing, that means that country's capacity to produce goods and services is increasing. So what does growth imply? So when growth takes place, there is a large stock of capital or a large stock of supporting services like transport, banking, and other infrastructural facilities. So when a country grows, you will find that the infrastructural facilities available in that country will keep on growing. So how do we measure growth? One of the indicators of growth is the gross domestic product, which we call as GDP. But GDP is not the only good indicator of growth. There are various other indicators, but GDP is the most popular method of measuring growth. Why is it not a good measure of indicator? Because it does not properly show the distribution of income among the various factors of production in the country. Although the GDP of a country might be increasing, but the distribution of income might not be even. In spite of the fact that a country is growing, its GDP increasing, we might find that poverty exists in that country. So GDP, although it is an indicator of growth, but it is not a very good indicator of growth. The other objectives of India's 5-year plans, specific objectives. Number one. Number two is modernization. Now, modernization is the improvement in the techniques of production which helps in achieving higher levels of production. That means when a country or when an economy modernizes, that means the techniques of productions are being upgraded, new technology is being used, so it results in the increase or improvement in the productivity of the factors of production. Next comes self-reliance. With self-reliance we mean that the country begins to be independent. A country starts getting independent, what we call as Atmanirbhar. India in its first 7-year plan, first 7 5-year plans avoided imports. Now this is a very interesting factor. For the first 7 5-year plans, India did not encourage imports. The reason was that India wanted that it should become self-reliant in the production of industrial goods, and it could avoid its dependence on the foreign countries or multinational companies and could encourage domestic industries. Next comes equity. Equity is the most important factor because it ensures that the benefits of growth are being enjoyed by the majority of the people of the country. Until and unless we can ensure that all the citizens are getting a decent life and access to the ways and means of earning or livelihood, then we cannot say that the economy has grown. Until and unless there is equity in the economy, we cannot say that the objectives of planning have been achieved. So equity is an important factor which will ensure that an economy is growing. Now let us come to the chronology of Indian plans. So the first plan, it started in 1951 and it continued up to 1956. Second 5-year plan was from 1956 to 1961. Third plan 1961 to 1966. Fourth plan 1969 to 1974. Fifth plan 1974 to 1978. Sixth plan 1980 to 1985. Seventh plan 1985 to 1990. Eighth plan 1992 to 1997. Ninth plan 1997 to 2002. Then 10th plan 2002 to 2007. 11th plan 2007 to 2012, and 12th plan 2012 to 2017. Now after the 12th plan, the planning commission was dissolved and it was the Niti Aayog that came up and substituted the planning commission. With Niti Aayog, the planning commission was not functional anymore. Now what is Niti Aayog? Niti Aayog is National Institute for Transforming India. When the Modi government came into power, Niti Aayog started functioning. So after 12th 5-year plan, India did not have any further plans. Now here are some questions for your assessment. The first is define economic planning. Then next, which year was planning commission formed in India? Then state the main objectives of India's 5-year plans. Which institution has replaced the planning commission? Then mention an indicator of economic growth, and finally, why do we plan? So thank you and stay safe.